Thanks for joining us. We're going to demo the second release from WiseArt Games. This game is called Mice in the Middle. The essence of this game is you have two opposing teams of students, the blue students and the red students. They're working in a laboratory and they've let the mice loose in the lab. What they're trying to do is be the first team to have their mice take 3 bites of the other team's cheese. The first to get to 3 points is the winner. Players keep track of score with the yellow cheese tokens. They have red and blue avatar pawns to represent their students. And they have red and blue joystick pawns to represent the mice. In a player's turn, what a player can do is they have basically 2 options. They can either take one of their students and they can place that student on the board along one of the edges of these hexagons here. There, for instance. Or what they can do is they can take a mouse and place the mouse on their respective colored cheese. So if we just stick with the red player here, the red player could either place this red student on the board. Alternatively, they can take their red mouse and put that mouse on the red cheese. After they've placed their student or placed a mouse on the board, you move on to moving the mice around the board. If it's the red player's turn, he's going to move however many number of mice he has on the board. And it doesn't matter which order he chooses to move them in, but there's some special rules on how the mice move. When moving mice, the first mouse that has to move is the mouse that is on that player's cheese. After that, the mice can be moved in any order. So the red player is going to take his red mouse that's on the cheese, and it has to move in any one direction, but it has to move as far as possible in that direction. So let's just say, for instance, the mouse decides to move ahead. It can keep moving until it hits one of these black pillars. These black pillars are obstacles. The mouse gets stopped in the hex in front of that pillar. Now the next 2 mice can move. What's going to happen for these mice is it's going to move in any one direction, right? So this mouse can move in this direction as far as it goes. Considering there's no student blocking its path along this line, it's just basically going to move right off the board. If the student got placed there, though, it's going to be able to move and get blocked by the student and stop in the hexagon just before that student. Alternatively, the mouse could get moved in this direction and it'll stop next to the other mouse beside it. This mouse, on the other hand, with nothing blocking its path, it's basically just going to end up moving straight off the board. If it's moved off the board, it's lost and returned back to the player's pool of mice here at the side of the board. Once all the mice have been moved, then it switches over to the next player, and it's the blue player's turn to go. Okay, we've seen some basics of mouse movement. Now let's look at some more specific examples. So let's just say, for instance, that the blue player has set up his pieces in such a way resembling something like this, while the red player has done something similar. Now, no one has produced any mice yet, but the red player decides that he's going to produce a mouse. So he produces a mouse and moves it up to his red pawn right here. The student blocks the mouse path, so it stops in this hexagon. From here, now it's the blue player's turn, because the red player had chosen to create a mouse. The blue player is going to decide to place a student on the board. He's going to place it right here. He's not allowed to place the student right next to the mouse because it's an ineligible spot because we can run into situations where mice will get blocked in. Additionally, he's not allowed to place the student on an edge that touches one of the cheeses. So he can't place it on any of these edges here or on his own. So that prevents situations of being able to just block the cheese off entirely and not allow another player to have an access to the cheese to score points. Additionally, you can't place students along the edges of the black pillars, nor can students be placed along the edges of the blue puddles, which are in the corners of the board. So in this situation, the blue player is going to decide to place his student right here. Now, the red player can do what he chooses. He's going to choose to make another mouse. Now the mouse that's in the board, now the mouse that's on the cheese has to move as far as it can in any one direction. It can't move this way because it's being blocked by the other mouse. So its eligible paths are to move up here to be blocked by the pillar, or move along this path and stop in the puddle. Whenever a mouse moves into a puddle, it has to stop its movement. So we'll say that it moves here. Now this mouse can move up to this spot and impact the blue student here. It can move to this spot and impact the blue student here. It can move off the board, or it can move back into its own colored cheese. There's a lot of awkward situations that can come up for the red player in this scenario. If the mouse moves into an opposing color player's student, so the red mouse hits the blue student, the red player removes his red mouse from the board, and the blue player places a blue mouse in its spot. So essentially the red player ends up losing his mouse, and now it's turned over to the other player's side, and now the blue mouse has a mouse that's in danger of striking and scoring a point on the other player's cheese. Now let's just say in this scenario that instead he decided that, well, I definitely don't want to move into one of the other player's students. He may move the mouse back onto his cheese, but that's even worse. If you move your mouse back onto your own cheese, so in other words, if any mouse hits the cheese, it's going to score a point for your opponent. So it's in your interest to not have your mouse move back onto your own cheese. So in this situation, the only real safe play for this mouse is to move off the board. If this player had chosen to not place a mouse on the board, but instead chose to make a student, he could place a student in a location like this, move his mouse up to there, and remain relatively safe for that turn. So now that we've had this scenario come up, we're going to do one more scenario here before we wrap things up. If we have a situation here on the board where, let's just say there's a red student in this spot here, we've got a blue mouse there, let's say we've got a blue student here. Now in this spot, on this hex, we have a red student on this edge and on this edge, and a blue student on this edge. And then we have two black pillars here. That means that there's only one free edge that's eligible for a student to be placed on it. So what's going to happen is the blue player is going to take his blue student, place it on the free edge that's left. What that's going to do is it's going to cause all the students that are surrounding that hexagon to leave. So now you have to take the two blue students and remove them, and the two red students and remove them, which has essentially freed up the path there for this mouse to move down to here. So now it gets blocked by the blue student, and in this scenario there's nothing that the red player can do, and the next turn the blue player is going to be able to move in and score a point on that player's cheese. So thanks for joining us to discuss the new game Mice in the Middle. Be sure to stay tuned on our Facebook feed for upcoming releases as they become available.